Thank you, colleagues. So we've got a longer declaration and the resolution, and then we have a shorter one as well, summarised, as we are pressed for time, which we will also circulate. But I think it's important that we first set the background of the resolution shortly and then the agreed program of action. But I ask that if I miss something or if you do not agree, that you please put up your hands if I need to include something, which we can then do, because it's very important that to stress that we have had multi-sectoral, transdisciplinary engagement today, and that we have been supported by so many government organizations, civil society, business, the faith community, academia. So we want everybody's voice to be reflected in this. And most importantly is we want to send this to policymakers, because it's important for them to then also see what we have gathered from our engagements today, especially because they have also pledged to commit to taking this work further. So it's important for us to then to get the right input in this regard. So this is the Cape Town Resolution on Social Justice and Sustainable Development Goal 2, Zero Hunger, adopted at the 6th Social Justice Summit, Artscape Theatre Centre, Cape Town, South Africa, on 18 October 2024. The participants recognise that hunger, food insecurity and malnutrition remain critical challenges in South Africa, despite constitutional and international commitments to ensure access to adequate food for all. Can we all agree on that one? Just as our grounding first statement, accept that ending hunger is a constitutional and international law human rights obligation flowing from sections 27 and 28 of the South African Constitution and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Are you happy with that, or do we need to include other international instruments as well? But I think this grounds it. Okay. Further, accept that this obligation requires an integrated, multidimensional, multifocal and intersectional approach with all role players, including civil society, global governance and international cooperations, playing their parts, mindful that governments bear the bulk of the responsibility for ending hunger and ensuring equal enjoyment of the right to food and adequate nutrition by all. It's a long paragraph, but are you all happy with it? Okay. Are convinced that hunger is also a social justice matter, flowing from the country's constitutional and international law social justice commitments, Ubuntu, and the acknowledgement that the majority of those trapped in hunger or at high risk of it tend to be social groups experiencing generational deprivation as an aftermath of apartheid and colonialism. Happy with that? Patriarchy, can we add patriarchy? Everybody happy? Okay, great. Let me do it now. Aftermath of, shall I say patriarchy, apartheid and colonialism? Okay, patriarchy, let me just, patriarchy, apartheid and colonialism. Emphasize that ending hunger is a sustainable development commitment in terms of the Copenhagen Declaration, Global SDGs, AU Agenda 2063 and the National Development Plan. Anything else to add there, or are you happy with that? No. Note that if efforts made to end hunger, which include an elaborate social security and social assistance system that includes social grants, child support grant, old age pension, disability grants, the National School Nutrition Program, a social relief of distress grant, a food for all campaign, and policies for economic access. I thought it's good to maybe name all of them. Prof, you happy? Okay. Are saddened, excuse me? Oh.
I just heard from multiple speakers that were specifically talking about maternal grants. So I was just wondering.
Should we include maternal grants as well?
Yeah, I just had been mentioned multiple
I'm mentioning what is here already is the social assistance system that include. It's what we have already. Yeah. Okay. So maybe keep that then in mind for if something that we then need to do when we get to that section. Okay. Are saddened that despite such efforts, hunger persists and more have been thrown into its dark pit by the multiple and concurrent crises of our time, exacerbated by corruption, maladministration in state affairs and corporate greed, which includes unconscionable food price inflation, gentrification and poor pay. Strong words, but do you agree? Yay or nay? Okay. Believe that the Social Justice Musa Plan can turn the trajectory and pace of advancing equality and ending poverty while overcoming hunger and climate change plus fostering peace. Happy with that?
Can influence the pace.
Can influence. The Musa Plan can turn the trajectory.
Strongly influence.
Can strongly influence and turn the trajectory and pace? Or do I take out turn the
I would
trajectory?
drop the turn and say strongly influence.
I think he's suggesting it's taking too much responsibility,
Okay.
it's just
It's true, okay. Can strongly influence the pace of advancing or just strongly influence advancing equality and,
What about catalyzing then?
Even better.
Instead of strongly interfering?
okay, can catalyze.
Yes. Catalyze.
Okay, can catalyze the the trajectory and pace of advancing, okay. Not because trajectory is a good word for going up.
But it was fun, it's just
It was just the, yeah, part, okay. Okay, cool. Okay, well, overcoming hunger and climate change plus fostering peace. Further believe that the purposeful design of policies and laws by and for all that centers justice can ensure congruence with constitutional objectives and should therefore inform the design of all laws, policies and programs. Or maybe the other way around, policies, laws and programs. Okay. Let me just quickly change those policies. Policies, laws, and programs. Okay, next step. We recognize that South Africa faces significant socio-economic inequalities. Despite the constitutional right to food, national frameworks and international and African instruments, a large proportion of the population remains food insecure. But it is a bit repetitive, do you think? Okay. Gaps between policy commitments and the lived realities of millions of South Africans persist, and the lack of coordination amongst the private sector, civil society organizations, and government efforts to combat hunger has been a significant barrier to creating sustainable change. Then we agree that key challenges include, so this is kind of a summary, so if you think I must delete the previous one and rather keep the key challenges, just say, we agree that key challenges include economic inequality and poverty, access to nutritious food, the existence of an implementation gap, impact of climate change and conflict, lack of proper nutrition for mothers and children, impact on disabled people, including the deaf community, and current one-size-fits-all policies and laws. Happy with that? Okay. We agree that the following... Oh, yes, Prof. Okay. So just food inflation or another something before it? Okay, so agree that key challenges include the something of food inflation. What's your... High food inflation rates. High food.
Just as a point of, not correction, but just to be politically correct. Sorry, I just wanted to make a suggestion as a point of, a better expression. Not people living, not people, disabled people, but people living with disabilities.
Impact on,
it's a more
okay.
positive
Yes.
expression.
Thank you,
Thank you.
people living with disabilities, including, is it fine if I say including the deaf community? So I don't have to say it, okay. Okay, cool. Okay, and high food inflation rates is the last one. Nothing,
And
As a whole, we see it more as more focus on physical disabilities than instead of focusing on the invisible disabilities as deaf. That's why I would like including the deaf or the invisible disabilities to have that amplified. So yes, we do fit into the disability category, but that's sometimes the
To emphasize.
misconception is that visible disabilities are more preferred over actually acknowledging invisible disabilities.
okay. Prof?
I support that, but not just including the deaf then. Then we should say including invisible disabilities such as deaf, because I'm glad that you mentioned that, because our colleague who was co-teaching with us in the social justice trainers course reminded us that exactly what we've just been told, but the other group that is excluded is mental health disabilities, because again, it's not a visible a disability, including neurodiverse people. Thank you.
So shall I include mental health disabilities as well? Okay. Okay.
And I don't know if it fits under this section, but for me, this point around transversal coordination of our food work is critically important. It's a huge budget expenditure, and there's very little transversal, especially when it comes down to subnational and local government level.
Transversal coordination of? Food
Food security, food in general, I think. It's just that, but in this case, yes, food security.
Of
fine.
food security. Okay, so transversal coordination of food security. Yes, Prof?
I said earlier that I don't like us to put food security at the front. I think we should say hunger and related food security, so that if we're going to work together for the next 12 months, let's focus on hunger. Let everyone understand what are we talking about. It's like, okay, people are hungry. If we say food security, they wonder, what is that? Thank you.
Okay. Another question? Yes.
Over here. I didn't hear in that articulation the rural dimension and the homelessness. If it's there, maybe I missed it. Thank you.
Okay, so we agree that key challenges include rural, rural what? I don't want to say the rural dimension.
Vulnerability.
We can note it, you can then wordsmith it when you have time.
Vulnerability,
Yeah.
but we also
Ru-
have vulnerability as well.
Yeah, vulnerability is related to rural and also homelessness.
Okay, that's a good one. Vulnerabilities
Okay.
related to rural, sorry, Prof. Yeah.
No, you can writing that, Doc. I like this edition, but now that we are listing, it might help to take the advice that Mr. Sharma has given us to consider which groups have been frequently mentioned, because then we will have to talk about children, we'll have to talk about students, and yeah.
Okay.
The one group that wasn't represented, and then nobody talked about that group, in previous groups they were represented, it's refugees. And it just makes us being those justices, just us kind of people who don't think about people who are not immediately related to us. So I would want, even though we didn't mention it, that we do think about the refugee community.
Okay, so I just want to now put it correctly. Vulnerabilities related to rural communities, that not the homeless. Does that sound? Is it okay? The homeless, students, children, and refugees. Is that? And then yes, over to you.
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure where that would fit in, but I think most of us, or many of us, are aware that sign language is a 12th official language at the moment. So when you go out into the community to actually do research or outreach, the information that is shared, or the communication that is shared to reach the communities, obviously we would, or the deaf community would need access in their language. And also accessing the right interpreters or the right means of communication. So maybe somewhere in terms of, specifically if you go into the rural areas, there are deaf people there as well. So maybe something with regards to language and the method of communication when you go out to do work in the communities. Also linked to the social work aspect. If you want to bring social work into play and you're dealing with disabilities, you need to have correct methods of dealing. Just I don't know where that would fit in.
Access to information. Does I? Equitable access to information, and then there's a question there at the back. Equitable access to information. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, I just wanted to say that when we were listing who's all responsible, I think that we seem to be missing the issue of the role of corporate also in addressing this. And I think we actually need to put it down there that corporate also has a role to play in addressing these social injustices.
So lack of coordination among the private sector, civil society organization, government, and the corporate community. Okay, the corporate community, civil society organizations, and government. Okay. Good, so. Okay, civil society, government, and
Government and international partners.
international partners. Okay, civil society organizations, government. Okay. Everyone happy with that? Okay. So this was key challenges. We agree that the following principles guide this resolution: human rights and Ubuntu, multidimensionality of hunger, focus on marginalized communities, social justice impact conscious policy reform, individual, maybe we should we say individual responsibility or individual and collective responsibility, and food education. Individual and collective responsibility, food education, because that also sums up the issue that we had with access to education or knowledge. Anything else that I might have, Prof? With human dignity, okay. And then human rights and Ubuntu after that, okay. Okay, human dignity, okay. Right, so there were 7. We thus hereby agree to adopt the following program of action to address these challenges collectively. Must we say individually and collectively? Jointly and separately? Well, yeah, that is a legal, yeah, individually. That's like a contract term, you know? Individually and collectively, to align with SDG 2 and to scale and fast-track the social justice MUSA plan and its key result areas. Strengthen legal accountability for food security. Support the Social Relief of Distress Grant, SRD grant, that's what I also got from this last session. Promote sustainable agricultural practices. Address food distribution inefficiencies. Focus on nutrition and food quality. Encourage public-private partnerships. Execute social justice impact assessments. Shall I add such as the SIAM, or can I just put SIAM in brackets?
I think prospective, remember anticipatory, they do impact assessments,
Yeah.
but they do them when the horse is already bolted.
And
What we want them is for them to Google the future before they pass the policy.
okay.
In fact, it's not they, it's us, because all of us do policies in our respective spaces. Yes, to Google the future before we pass it.
Okay, so anticipatory social justice impact assessments. Yes, ma'am?
I think that's a very important question, but I think we should include both sovereignty and food security, because you can't have sustainable food security if you don't have food sovereignty. For example, the International Anti-Corruption Conference, they played a movie that is called The Grab. So the Grab is, these people are like Vice Africa, and there's people who are buying land in every country in order to hijack food sovereignty. So they buy the land, and then they will then be in charge of all the food production. And then you can't have it in democracy if somebody else is in charge of all of the food production. So food sovereignty, I think they recommend, they gave us some things, but we get communities to retain certain aspects of food. I don't know if that resonates with you, sir. That will bring back the ability of local communities to be in charge of some of the food production and decommercialize aspects of food.
But also in the context of localities, as we heard from some of the experts who were presenting here. But we can't rule out the issue of interdependence between subsystems, because we may not have all the capability to produce what we want. So you always have to trade, and corporates have a particular role that they play in the whole space. Thank you.
Okay, so do I add to food security, strengthen legal accountability for food security and food sovereignty? Or must I make it a separate?
I think food sovereignty, but then within a context of
Food sovereignty within a context
reciprocity,
of,
or within the concept of but I wanted to capture your part that we don't say food sovereignty is then disengaged from citizens.
within the context of? Appreciating, okay. Food sovereignty, appreciating. Just say again. Yeah. Appreciating the interdependence of? Okay.
Is it not adding more jargon to a space that's already heavily loaded with jargon? And what we're talking about when we talk about food sovereignty is really about democracy and deep democracy. I, Absolutely. No, so I'm not questioning that element. I'm just kind of questioning the kind of bringing of another term around food sovereignty when we. Anyway, maybe it's just.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agree on the principle.
No, I like Prof. Tuli's idea that we do capture, together with security and sovereignty, the notions of interdependence and reciprocity, and we can find that an appropriate formulation
Okay,
for
so
that.
I'm going to highlight this in yellow just to make a note that we might have, just consider the phrasing.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just put a note in here.
Like you said, make amendments to the word. Sorry, just my last comment. Like you're saying, make amendments to the word. We are just drafting now, but you also need to remember sometimes you need to make the words a bit easy for the community to understand. Sometimes they don't understand these jargons. And
Yeah.
with terminology, don't use law terminology. Yes, I know it's lawyers and that are helping draft, but just for the roots of the community to understand it better.
Okay, so not so highly academic. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Sometimes one look at these resolutions and then you do think, what does it mean?
Must say, you guys are very collegial. The last time I was part of a draft resolution, that draft was not resolved one bit. You guys are exemplary. I'm learning a lot here. So thank you very much for just this sheer cooperation. It could have been worse, Marna.
Okay, well, hallelujah.
Yeah, please, well done, guys. No, go for it.
Leo?
Dr. Loans, I just want to ask, should we not maybe define some of these terms somewhere also to kind of help? Because I think these terms are important to include, but as some of our colleagues have said, not everyone understands them.
Talking like a true lawyer, Leo.
Yes, so I think a definitions page or paragraph will definitely be helpful, especially for these terms. And I'm not sure the legislators will also understand what these terms actually are, if we want to have effective policies.
Okay, so
May I add to that then perhaps that you could, as we started today, in 3 different languages, isiXhosa, Afrikaans, and English, you bring in more communities. It's consistent with the language policy of the province and of the university. And I think that's when we start to involve people through language.
okay. Okay, so the last one was ensure disability inclusive communication. Okay. Inclusive. We conclude, hunger is not just a charity issue, but a social justice issue. By focusing on the constitutional right to food, strengthening policy and legal accountability, promoting sustainable agriculture, and addressing systemic inequalities, South Africa can make meaningful progress towards SDG 2. You wanted to...
What do we commit ourselves to do? Like to lead by example in accepting, believing, and showing commitment.
Okay, so must
Because-
we do that maybe before?
Maybe it would be the last sentence about
Okay.
that we'll lead by example. Is it okay? Because I honestly think that in our own small spaces, we can do something. We've seen from the students, Liam is part of that they move the needle and people are getting those meals. And that didn't wait for government, and we could do more of those things. Yeah, thank you.
So maybe that'll relate to this third one, collective action. Collective, I don't know if it must be collective and individual action, must include civil society stepping up more meaningfully in a collaborative, all hands on deck partnership aimed at leaving no one and no community behind.
Sorry.
Okay. So we will lead by
So-
example.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the whole
Okay.
issue of, yeah. That question of what are we going to do when we leave here today? Yeah. Okay, we pledge.
Yeah.
Yes, Nick?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I would just like to suggest that we might consider that the phrase that you have just before SDG 2. Could you mind just repeating that? A few words.
That hunger is not just a charity issue, but a social justice issue.
No, you said SDG, you used the term SDG 2.
Well, yes, so I said by focusing on the constitutional right to food, strengthening policy and legal accountability, promoting sustainable agriculture and addressing systemic inequalities, South Africa can make meaningful progress towards SDG 2.
Yeah, in addition to making progress to, progress to the attainment of SDG 2, because we want to attain it. We not only want to make progress, I think that's very important, but we want to progress making to the attainment thereof.
Okay. Of SDG 2 by 2030.
Thanks. Problem. No problem.
Okay, so then we had collective action must include call for a renewed commitment to achieving zero hunger by addressing the root causes of food insecurity through a social justice framework. Hunger is not merely a technical problem, but a profound social injustice that demands urgent and coordinated action across all sectors of society. We therefore pledge to lead by example.
Thank you. Sorry, one more word addition that we heard come up yesterday in the conference was also, I think maybe more in the breakout sessions, was agroecology. So not just using sustainable agriculture, but also using that terminology of doing the agriculture with nature.
So is that
Agroecology, just adding that word in.
So if you provide me with your sentence.
So it was more adding, so I think you've got sustainable agriculture in there, so I think just comma, agroecology as well.
Okay. Agroecology. Okay. Got it. Yes. This by focusing on the constitutional right to food, strengthening policy and legal accountability, promoting sustainable agriculture, agroecology, and addressing systemic inequalities, South Africa can make meaningful progress towards the attainment of SDG 2 by 2030. That cause a barrier to access to food. Yeah, okay.
Colleagues, as we make progress, it has been brought to my attention that the technical team has to take leave. I'm quite aware that if one person talks, the second will talk. I'm not stunting any contributions. I'm just trying to make sure that we are well within the remit of the time that has been allocated to us. May I please request that if it's negotiable, perhaps you try and resist the temptation to say something, unless, of course, it's going to change a material concept or make a meaningful contribution, not to suggest that nothing you say here is not meaningful, but I'm just trying to strike what near impossible balance there is. So, Marna, we are really at your mercy, but as well as that of colleagues on the ground, because the technical team has another brief. They really do. The venue, of course, we are woefully out of time.
Okay, so is everyone happy with we end then we therefore pledge to lead by example? Okay, great.
I should have said this earlier. Thank you, guys. Many congratulations. I think that on its own is worth a round of applause. How Marna was able to get us to be relatively agreeable so quickly is amazing. Marna, stay on stage, please. I'm going to ask Professor Koopman to come up and offer the vote of thanks. But Professor Madonsela, please come up on stage as well. I think this... Marna, bly net hier so asseblief. Sit. Where's the rest of your team? Panashe, please come through. Absolutely, Panashe, come through. Where are the rest of the colleagues from the Center of Social Justice? But I think the colleagues who've contributed to making this event for the last week what it has been, from the dinner to yesterday to today. Colleagues, please come up stage. It's important that your faces also be seen. Yeah. And from me, that's the last you'll hear from me. It's been a great pleasure. If I do disappear, it's because I have a flight to catch. But Prof, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate you. You look amazing. And thank you for your strong contributions as well. And you're the last speaker for the day.
Program Director, first of all, I would like to ask that we really applaud our Program Director. Thank you. Yeah. Prof. Tuli, we must somehow get this man and lock him up in a room only for us. But I really want to say thank you for the way you led us, and spot on. We appreciate it, colleague Nkaba Mabeke. High appreciation. Then, secondly, I go to according to the list that I have received, we thank the Rector and Vice Chancellor of Stellenbosch, Prof. Wim de Villiers. We thank all our colleagues who did the keynote addresses for us, Dr. Babangana Amudu, also Deputy Minister Samantha Jane Graham, Minister Kumbuzo Chaveni, Professor Nicolas Smith, who also served in a panel. We thank the Itemba Youth Choir. We thank the readers of the preamble of the Constitution, Abanati and Shortshaw, Danielle Takis and Christopher Kutsia Malherbe. And then the 4 S's. We thank all staff members of different institutions who were here, all students, all societal partners, and literally all speakers in our panels. I saw the Dean of Theology also here during the afternoon, colleague Reginelle. And then we want to thank our different sponsors and partners, the Department of International Relations and Cooperations, the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, the National Youth Development Agency, the United Nations South Africa, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, the DSI NRF Center for Excellence in Food Security, the Southern Africa Food Lab, the South African Human Rights Commission, the Artscape and all the staff members, especially Dr. Marlene Leroux, the COO of Artscape. Then also Daily Maverick, Woolworths, Food Justice, Spur, Heineken and Makwanda Empowerment Trust, technical support from DPK, and all the individuals who work tirelessly behind the scenes. And you wouldn't blame me if I say, Prof. Tuli, thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, if I think what universities are for, then I will say these 2.5 days again confirmed what universities are about. We thank you for your leadership with your team, and I really want us to applaud Prof. Tuli and a great team. And she wouldn't blame me, but we have a council member of Stellenbosch University, Dr. Louise van Rijn, who attended throughout, and thanks, Louise. It's great that we have a council member attending. Thanks for that. Colleagues, in saying goodbye, let me say thank you for all the inputs. It was clear, I listened, and regarding hunger, we heard afresh, we must have a vision, a dream for a country and a world where there's no more hunger. I heard criticism. This is unacceptable. People cannot sleep tonight hungry. And then we heard stories of hunger. I mean, people eating cats, children eating sand, people committing self-death and the death of their children because of hunger. We heard the stories here. But we heard great technical analysis also, data, scientific analysis. And then people said we must look afresh at our policies and plans and protocols and projects and processes and practices that make hunger history. I conclude my word of thanks by saying in the struggle years, we had the so-called notion of we must continuously conscientize, organize, and mobilize. I call it the .com practices. To overcome hunger, we must conscientize, organize, and mobilize. And I feel that has happened at this summit. Today is 18 October. Prof. Thule, you referred to Prof. Russell Botman. It would have been his birthday today. He taught us about hope in action. And we really need that hope. If we look at the major challenges, then I want to, a little song that I grew up with gives me energy. It says, small grains, small drops of water, small grains of sand, form the oceans, build the continents. Really, let us say we can build new oceans and new continents where hunger is history. Thank you, colleagues.